particular signs that we had. And during that time, our flag was white. But in that struggle with the three rough ones, cut you here, cut you there, and cut you there, there were three cuts too. And Drew Ali let us know that that flag turned red because of the blood that we shed in protecting this divine creed. I'd like to give honor to the American flag, even though those stripes in the American flag, those same stripes is on my back, because we have been whipped by many stripes. However, this government is protecting us in our ignorance and our emphasis. So we give honor to the flag, because through Juali we have become citizens. Because in every government, everybody flies two flags. In this government, you have Moorish Americans, you have German Americans, you have Chinese Americans, you have Mexican Americans. And everybody fly two flags. In this government, there's no flag right of the American flag, because this is the great melting pot on which we live. So I'd like to give honor to our two flags, the flag of our origin and the flag of our birth. I'd like to give honor to all literature pertaining to Islam in the Moorish Science Temple of America. At this time, I'd like to give honor to a special person. You know, I don't like giving honor to a lot of Moorish Americans today, because every Moorish American that I come in contact with, they're giving more honor to those that taught them rather than honor to Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So I want to give honor to this special sister today. I want to give honor to her. She's from Chicago. Her name is Sister Christina Price Bay. And the reason why I'm giving honor to this sister, because if it wasn't for her, nobody would be attending the prophet's grave site. As we see every day on social media, people are taking pictures there with themselves with the prophet. So I'd like to give honor to Sister Christina Price Bay, because when everybody was running around talking about who in charge or who gonna take charge, she was telling us to go find the prophet's grave site, because it went all the way under the ground. So I'd like to give honor to her, and not because she's greater than the prophet, because she's not. Because everybody that we talk about, they was taught by the prophet, Noble Drew Ali, or the ones that the prophet taught. So what I want to do right now, I want to read from the Moorish Holy Quran, the book of the seven seals. The none was able to open and read from the sacred pages the messages of purity and love. This book was given to us by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and he had to reveal it to us, because Drew Ali never said that this book was revealed to him. He said this book was divinely prepared. And he had to prepare this book divinely because of what the Rosicrucian Society was in the process of doing. They took unto thee our grant, they took the Quram Gospel, and they made it their own. But today, we're going to read from this book, because I want to talk about some things that has been going on in the Moorish nation, and the members here at Portland, Oregon begin to ask me certain questions. But they already have the book. All they have to do is read it. So what I want to do today is read from the Moorish Holy Quran. And the reason why I want to read from Moorish Holy Quran, because I want to read from chapter 19. And there was different segments in this Quran. But the reason why I want to read from chapter 19 this evening, because last week I read from a chapter. And when the chapter was talking about Jesus was in a tomb. And then when he was in the tomb, he wrestled with the conquerors of men and conquered death. And when he conquered death, he was able to take this mighty stone that was at the tomb as though it were a pebble and cast it to the side. So I'm going to read from verse 19, and I'm going to read from verse 17 until I stop. And it reads on this wise. Behold, I am not myth made of fleeting winds, for I am flesh and bones and brawn, but I can cross the borderland at will. Now, thus we just had a reading of the Moorish Holy Quran, divinely prepared by our Holy Prophet Noble Drew Ali for our earthly and our divine salvation. So when Jesus was in the tomb, and when Jesus was in the tomb, he was talking. And he said, they put me in a tomb. He said, but while I was in this tomb, I wrestled with the conquerors of men. Last week we talked about the conquerors of men. The conquerors of men are anything that's hard for you and I to overcome that have conquered us. And once we begin to conquer these things, when I just read, say I'm flesh and bones and brawn, but I can cross the borderline at will. What is the borderline that Jesus crossed at will? The borderline is the line that's uniting divinity and matter. And when I was in school, they told me that matter was anything that occupies space and have weight. So we're looking beyond that. We're not even in the physical. We're in the spiritual. Even the tools that we're going to talk about today, because you know in the Moorish Holy Quran, it was talking about Jesus one day. And Jesus said that he was with his Father out there working. And when Jesus seen the tools that his Father was using to build the temple, Jesus said, these tools remind me of the ones that we handle in the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where we build up character. So now we see that you build up your character through thought. Thought is the cause of it all. When you're talking about crossing the borderline at will, that means you changing from divinity or from matter into divinity. Because when you're in the matter, you're in the flesh and the bones and the brawn, telling you that you could cross the borderline at will. And the will of man make possible the actions of the holy breath. And when the will of Allah and the will of man become one, then the resurrection is a fact. Now, let me get into my subject matter, because I'm not telling you what I've been told. I'm telling you what I know because I've experienced some things. My subject matter basically is talking about history. And the brother that brought me in the Moorish Science Temple, that was my instructor, he told me that when he first found the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, he was a Mason coming down there from Southern Maryland, moving up there to Baltimore, and he thought that he had it all going on. He had a fez with signs and symbols on it. He had some tools, and he had a lot of different things. Thought he could challenge the prophet and everybody else. So he met the prophet. The Cook-Bay brothers took him over there, and he sat down, and he met the prophet. And the first thing that the prophet told this brother, I ain't even going to call his name, because like I say, you got brothers and sisters that always calling somebody else's name other than the prophet. And it's not bad about calling somebody else's name, but you call their name more than you call the prophet, like they taught the prophet. So Drew Ali is the only prophet in this day and time. Now you got 5 or 6 more prophets. See? So we're talking about the one that was born January the 8th, 1886 in the state of North Carolina. This is the one that we're talking about today. So he told Noble Drew Ali, he told my man, he said that you joining the Moorish Science Temple, one of the first things you're going to have to get rid of. And he said, what is that? He said, that Masonic stuff that you're a part of. And he said, I'm going to explain to you why you have to get rid of the Masonic stuff. And the first thing he said is because there are lessons that you need to teach. And the lesson that you need to teach is coming from your genealogy. He said, did not the book say, will you give in brief the line genealogy through which Jesus came? And the answer was, some of the great fathers through which Jesus came are Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. So he said, you got to give away that Masonic stuff, because if you don't, you won't be able to teach the teachings that I have for you to teach, because it's the secret to some people, because the secrets are you and me. So he said, you cannot become a Mason, give it up. If you want to be anything, you can be a carpenter. Because Juali said in our literature, he don't say anything about a Mason. He's talking about a carpenter, but he's talking about carpenter tools when he was working with his father, Joseph. So now, there's a brother by the name of Solomon. And Solomon is the son of David. And every time you hear someone talking about the Temple of Solomon, you're talking about a Masonic order from your perspective. But we come to find out that Ruth is the grandmother of Solomon because Solomon is the son of David. Now, that's not the David star right there. The David star that they're talking about today, they say it's a six-pointed star, which they call the hectagram. But what we know, that is the star of David, because the star of David is the house of David, and this is from which we come. So now I'm getting ready to get into something today. So now we're going back to the Temple of Solomon. In the Temple of Solomon, they have passwords. And the two passwords that they have that's the strongest is the two pillars. And the two pillars that they have is Jacquin and Boaz. Now, just before I left D.C., I was with my son-in-law and my nephew and my daughter, and we was talking about this house of David. We was talking about Jesus, and we was talking about Muhammad, and we was talking about Buddha, and we was talking about Confucius, and I like it because all of them right now, they call themselves something other than what their father called themselves, on which they are a reflection of me. So now, when he told my man not to become a part of the Masonic order and give that back, then he gave him some words like Jacquin, and he gave him another word called Anna. And a lot of people never heard this before. A lot of people never heard this before. And if you're in a Masonic order, you probably haven't heard it from this perspective either, because you ain't 33. You ain't 33 yet. And when you become 33, you still is an illusion, something that'll pass away. Because when I come here, this right here is frozen. You don't see it's moving now. But I had it in an ice box. And when I had it in an ice box, it was 33 degrees. And when I went to take it out of the ice box, it was frozen. It was frozen because if you put anything in your ice box and it's 33 degrees, you know one thing, it's going to be frozen. So now my fast is not frozen. My fast is not tied down. My fast is swinging 360 degrees because 3 and 6 is 9, and that's man standing on the square. See, when we begin to talk about numbers, when we begin to talk about letters, and when we begin to talk about hieroglyphics, we're talking about Jesus. Because we hear a lot of people today that call themselves Moorish American said that the J came later on. But when you hear us talking about hieroglyphics, and when the handwriting was on the wall in Egypt, one of the letters that was there was Jesus, the J. And these lessons are for all those who love Jesus and desire to know about his life, works, and teachings. And he told us, do not falsely use these lessons. They are for good, peace, and happiness for all those that love Jesus. So now let me get into my subject matter. Now, when you look at Jacquin and when you look at Anna, I keep reiterating this because you don't hear it nowhere else. You haven't heard it. When you look at Jacquin and when you look at Anna, you come to find out that this is the father and the mother of Mary, Jesus' mother. Jesus' mother's name was Anna. Jesus' father's grandfather's name was Jacquin. Now, Jacquin and Boaz. Now, we know that Ruth, the Moabite, and the Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. So when you begin to talk about Ruth, when you begin to talk about David, when you begin to talk about Solomon, you are talking about those of African descent. So now they took the secret. These old three rough dudes took the secret. They hit me in the head. Now my crown I have on is red. See, like I have on my head. At one time, it was white. But through going through what we gone through and me fighting to uphold this covenant of the great God Allah, which is honoring thy father and thy mother. See, when you honor your father and your mother, your days may be longer upon the earth land which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee. And there's not a lot of people that's honoring their father and their mother. You're not honoring your mother. If you call yourself Negro, if you call yourself colored, or if you call yourself black, because that means that your mother is nowhere to be found, because man derives his name from the earthland. Chinese are from China, Germans are from Germany, and Vietnamese are from Vietnam. So if you don't honor your mother by proclaiming your nationality, then you have no place on this earthland. So when we say that nationality is the order of the day, this is why we honor our mother. But now when you honor your father, that means that you're honoring your divine creed. Honor thy mother and thy father, that thy days may be longer upon the earthland which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee. So now, we've been hearing all week about some great leaders I heard, because I don't know too many of them, because the only leaders I know is the one that's in the Moorish Science Temple. And the reason why the only ones I know that's in the Moorish Science Temple, because if you're not in the Moorish Science Temple, then you are really a slave. Let me explain why. 5/5 in mathematics all day is a whole. They said that we were 3/5 of a man. And they said that we were 3/5 of a man because 2 of the fifths was missing. And what are the other 2 that was missing? Your nationality and your divine creed. And if you begin to go to these secret organizations, because Noble Drew Ali said, he said, I've taken the covers off of all secret organizations. Because all secret organizations, their password is you and me, because we are the great secret. We are talking about the Egyptian Adab. We are talking about honor thy father and thy mother. So when you honor your father and your mother, that means that your days will be longer upon this earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee. Now, you might disagree, but the book say, what is our prophet to us? He said, he is an angel of Allah, who was sent to bring us the everlasting gospel of Allah. It said, but what is the everlasting gospel? So the everlasting gospel is a saving power that comes from Allah through our ancient fathers by his prophet. So now a lot of us, they say, man, they in Portland, Oregon now, and they talking about a new organization called the Moorish Science Temple of America. The Moorish Science Temple of America is not new. The Moorish Science Temple of America has been around since 1913. All these people that you honor, all these people that you think are those offensive, they was really bought off by Rome. Because you cannot talk about Rome in the Masonic order. He gonna shut you up. He gonna shut you up because he gonna tell you that it's a secret. So now you all told me don't go in. I'm not going over there. I'm not going over there because much as I like to talk about Noble Drew Ali, if I go to the Masonic order, then I can't tell you about Boaz. I can't tell you about Joaquin. I can't tell you about my forefathers. And Drew Ali say Boaz by Ruth and Joseph by Mary. See, we came through the door through Ruth. That's why it's by Ruth. We came through the door through Mary. That's why I say by Mary. So when you count it up, it ain't but 7. You might get 9, but it ain't but 7 because the woman saved us 1,000,000 times. You know, and they saved us from this perspective through Ruth, and they saved us again through Joaquin, who is Anna's husband and Jesus' grandfather. So now, why would one who's supposed to be conscious, because even those that my man taught, He told a lot of them, and they sitting around me sneaking off to a Masonic order. Why? Because it ain't enough for you. You need some more. This ain't good enough for you. Then there's a brother. He supposed to have a little knowledge. He been talking about the Masonic order for the many of years. They got him now. They went to him, gave him 33 degrees. Now he can't talk about that no more. He got to shut up and talk about something else. Now he couldn't come over anyway through genealogy because long as you call yourself black. Black, according to science, means death. Negro is a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. Colored is anything that has been painted, stained, varnished, or dyed, even tinted. So now we're talking about our history. That's the title of the lesson today. The title of this lesson today is history. But we're not talking about history. We're talking about our own. And this is what Noble Drew came because we have fezes on. When they used to see the Moors years ago, they used to think that they was Masons because they had fezes on. See? But this is our custom. When you see the fez, what do you see? You see the human head of intelligence. When you see this fez, it swings 360. Now, they have many lessons as we deal with the fez, but one of the lessons that's dealing with this fez, when you see this tassel swinging, it reminds us of Jesus. And the reason why it reminds us of Jesus, because Jesus say, draw all men unto me. And the way that you draw men unto Jesus is by living a moral and clean life. Because Jesus lived a moral and clean life. Jesus said something about Satan. He said, where are you going, Satan? And Satan said, I'm going to and fro the earth, seeking who I may devour. He said, have he finished his task of devouring? He said, yes. It said, when was the time declared out? And it said, when he nailed Jesus on the cross. But then Jesus said something. Jesus said, it is finished. And it said, what did he have reference to when he talking about it is finished? And he's talking about he had reference to the end of Satan. Because if you ain't finished with Satan, then Drew Ali can't use you yet. See, because you got to go through some things because you be ready for this mission. Because we're talking about a mission for some strong brothers. We ain't talking about no chumps. We're talking about somebody that's firm and fortified and can stand on your square. And when you're talking about the square, you're talking about a 45-degree angle. Everybody have a perspective about the 45-degree angle. But in the Masonic Temple of America, our 4 is the 4 sacred schools of thought, on which is Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius. And the 5 is the 5 highest principles known to man, which is love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So the book say, whenever a nation is in need for a prophet, Allah will send one. You know, he sent Jesus, he sent Muhammad, he sent Buddha, and he sent Confucius. They are the same reincarnated spirit, you know, because each came in a different era of time. Now, right now, you might find somebody say, well, I'm Muhammad come again. You never heard that before. Because in the Masonic Temple, we talk about a couple of Muhammads. We talk about a Muhammad from Arabia, and we talk about a Muhammad from a lot of other places, because we know in 1453 Byzantine, the Moors fought with the Ottoman Turks to restore the Islamic creed. And when we fought with the Ottoman Turks to restore the Islamic creed, we were still fighting in Spain. We just love Allah so much, we was aiding and assisting everybody that was under the pale-skinned nations of Europe, of whom was governing a portion of Palestine at that time. So now when Jesus said, it is finished, and he said, what do you have reference to? He's talking about all those things that he used to do. He finished with them. He said all that he's going to let go. He said, because you can't serve 2 masters at the same time. You have to love one and despise the other. And you hear people every day talking about unity. I quoted unity. But when I quoted unity, I'm not talking about me and Joe get together, or me and Blow get together. I'm talking about unity. It says through carnal thoughts and words and deeds, man tore himself away from Allah. He debased himself. You separate yourself from God, and when you separate yourself from God, then there's no unity. Before you can talk about coming in unity with man, you first must come in unity with God, because God is the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And if you're not in tune with God, then how can you be in tune with humanity? So right now, nationality is the order of the day. Nobody else is talking about nationality other than the Moorish Zion Temple of America. Now, Noble Drew Ali made a statement, and he said, I'm going to make the European enforce my law. This is what he said. And now the Europeans talk to me, the Europeans are talking to a lot of other people, and the Europeans got a problem. They don't have a problem with Drew Ali like that brother said, but they have a problem. And every time I talk to somebody, they say, Lynch-Bey, can you give me a copy of your divine constitution and bylaws? I said, but why do you want a copy of the divine constitution and bylaws? They say, because I want to be able to teach the children about Act 6. And if I teach the children about Act 6, then they'll be able to learn to love instead of hate. But I said, what about 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 before you get to 6? Because this divine constitution and bylaws, you got to understand it's a divine constitution and bylaws. And in our Sunday school class, it tells you what the Constitution is and what the bylaws is. So if you don't study all of your divine constitution and bylaws, because I need to know, you say you want Act 6, well, is that a constitution or is it a bylaw? Because it says constitution and bylaw. So Drew Ali said he signed up or go the certain way. Drew Ali came. Ain't no such thing as a national organization, because we are national and international. We have two different flags. So if you come and say you want to study Noble Drew Ali, you got to study the literature that Noble Drew Ali bought. He said, I bought you everything that it takes to save a nation, that take it to save yourself. And you got brothers around here talking about there ain't no such thing as a J. They don't want to read the divine constitution and bylaws. The only thing you want to read is Act 6. You don't want to read the dictionary laws, and you don't really want to Moorish Holy Quran. You don't want to Moorish your Holy Quran, but every prophet came with three things: the Kitab, the Huklum, and the Nudliwa. You have a problem with that, ask your Grand Sheikh, what am I talking about? Because when you see that, you'll see that Drew Ali had to bring us something to redeem us from that which was lost. And what was lost is our mind. That's why when the prophet went to the sheiks of Arabia, he said, give me back what's mine. And they thought that Drew Ali was talking about something tangible. But he was talking about giving me back the mind of my people. Now, there's a book. There's a book that the sheik used to tell us about. And the book was a 2-page book. And the 2-page book that we're talking about is your higher self and your lower self. Because there was a time when there was no books. God had to send somebody down to make the book and give us some understanding. Because understanding is the rock on which man builds himself. So now you call yourself a Moorish American. And you don't even have a nationality card. You might have went down to the courthouse and got carried by some dudes, and they told you to go down to the courthouse and pay some money and get some paperwork, and not knowing that them chumps carried you. Because I sat with Drew Ali's wife. I sat with Drew Ali's secretary. I sat with Drew Ali. They just left. The last one might be gone, and they just left. And that they was leaving in 2000 and in the 80s. They was here for a long time. They was our teachers. Matter of fact, there's a brother by the name of R. Love Ill. Everybody hate him, man. They hate this brother. And they hate him, but before I met him, I was given some lessons about C. Kirkman Bey, F. Nelson Bey, and J. Blakely Bey. We was given this because a question I had asked one time. I say, if we need to come together in unity, where should we start at? What temple should we go to? I said, now you done told me about the pork eating. You done told me about all these different things. He said, but ain't but one. He said, go where the majority of the Moors are. I said, they say we don't have no convention centers. We don't have no land. He said, hold it. Say, when the Cook-Bays helped R. Loveville get into office, and right next to the convention hall in Chicago, there was a brother that lived there named Cook-Bey, had a star and crescent in the window. You got to understand, that's the convention center. There's no other grand body in the Moorish Science Temple of America that have a convention center other than the grand body of C. Kirkland Bey. The reason why I said that is because it's a sister that went to Chicago. She was up this way. She came on the show. And she went to Chicago, and when she got up there, she didn't get no help, and she was homeless. And then I seen Brother Fuquan Bey call her and tell her to come to Detroit. But when I sat with her, before I can get C. Kirkland Bey's grand body out my mouth, she said they told me that C. Kirkland Bey was a Mason. Okay. Did they tell you that everybody else was too, and everybody else was a gangster and doing everything else? Because if you can't say nothing good, don't say nothing at all. Now, Sister Wilson Bey. Sister Wilson Bey is another sister that used to be with the prophet. And Sister Wilson Bey lived on the colony. Matter of fact, I had a couple of meetings. Brother Page Hill took me down there, and the chaplain. And we went down there and had a few meetings with her. And when Loveville founded the convention center, you know, she got upset because she felt that the convention center should have been on Moorish Home number 1. So now you got a Moorish Home number 1, and you have a Moorish Home number 2. What other grand body have a Moorish Home number 1 and a Moorish Home number 2? Tell me another grand body that have Moors that have a convention center, because the ones I see, and October coming up soon, the only ones I see, you go pay these Europeans. They have a convention in their hotel, and you pay them. So it ain't hard to find out where we're supposed to be at, because you got to look, and you got to understand. I was asked a question. So why are you over with Loveville? I'm going to call his name. And I said, because I was instructed to go there. I was instructed one time that these were the ones, you know, that's really holding up the bloodstained banner. They said because you might have 2 or 3 other people over here. You might have 2 or 3 other people there. They're in a little house, a little room, and rats running all across the floor. But these people built something. So what we need to do, if you really want unity, I've been trying. There's a lot of brothers that we was close to. But because of their associations, we can't even be close to them, because you have brothers and sisters, they must be working for Rome, because they cuss brothers out. They cuss and use profane language, and a lot of brothers are scared of them, and they don't want to be around them. And, you know, it makes me just sit back and look at them, because I don't fear nothing but the great God Allah. But we're trying to bring this back under one head like the prophet left it, and the prophet said he going to make the European enforce his law. So right now, when we get up here in Portland, Oregon, we give praise to Allah, we give honor to the prophet, and we give honor to Marcus Garvey, and there's a million other people that I want to give honor to. But the reason why I don't is because the people around today, they giving honor to people that's no longer around, carry the prophet any kind of way they want, and it's rough. So the members that ask me these particular questions, it's right there in your literature. All you got to do is travel and go see these things, because the truth right now is you want to try to build your foundation. Because when we're talking about building a temple, a perfected man, a temple that can never be destroyed, we're talking about this temple. We're talking about this temple. And this is the temple we're talking about building. We're talking about trying to become one with God. And the way that you become one with God is do what God say do. A brother put something on the thing the other day, and it was saying that you got to go with truth. See, truth and falsehood is strangely mixed, but then they go down. And naught goes down, but truth will abide. So when we begin to understand what a Muslim is, because we didn't say Muslim. In this Arab time, Jew Ali say Muslim, because Muslim is the Western terminology. You have an Eastern terminology and you have a Western terminology. But all of those that's using the Eastern terminology, most of them is working with what is known as the Berlin Conference. Because most of those people, you see the priest on that other day. Him and the priest and the bishop, they was on there kissing and talking about bringing the unity together of two different fractions, which was Islam, not Islamism, but Islam and Judaism or Christianity. But now we know that the foundation of Christianity began in Rome. It was the Roman nation that founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. The Roman yoke and law, the customs, the culture, the heritages, and the tradition of somebody else. So if you accept these pagan holidays, if you accept eating bad, if you accept fornicating and drugs and hatred and killing, then that's Christian. You at least get a good European education and I can use you. And we all start running to college. We wanted to go to college to be mathematicians. We wanted to go to college to be doctors. And when we looked at the lesson, you cannot go and get a European education to be a doctor. You cannot go to get a European education to be a mathematician, because math and science all come out of Egypt. Egypt is the capital empire of the dominion of a Mexican. Now they say they fired our guns, and the British kept it coming. They say it wasn't as many as it was a while ago. Fired once more, the hounds couldn't catch it. Down in Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. So now you say we're more American. North, South, and Central America. The same X that's in Mexico is the same X that's in Mexico. And all these came through Nova Jubilee. You can't get this nowhere but in the Moorish Science Temple of America. And all of you who claim to be a part of the Moorish Science Temple of America, if you're not studying your divine constitution and bylaws, if you're not studying your questionnaire, if you're not studying your additional laws, and if you are putting this Moorish flag outside your car and talking about these Europeans this and these Europeans that, you're putting the whole Moorish nation in jeopardy. I mean, if you don't want to be a part of the Moorish Science Temple, don't. Now, on my 7th, right here, we have 4 breaks. And these 4 breaks is gold. And why are these 4 breaks gold? Because Jubilee say the gold, the silver, and the commerce belong to the citizens alone. And without your national citizenship, by name and principle, you have no true wealth. So if you call yourself Negro, if you call yourself colored, if you call yourself black, you have no rights that a citizen is bound to respect. They gave you some names, they identified you with them, and they told you this is who you were. So he told you that you are not what your forefathers were anymore. And he said that your religion is Christianity. And he said, but the foundation was found in Rome. And these are they who crucified Jesus. So everybody keep talking about, you love my Jesus. Now, when you look at a Moorish American, you'll say, man, how can you say that you love Jesus when you in the Moorish Science Temple of America? Well, you got to understand that they buried my forefathers in Vatican Square. They took on our name. They got Jesus now looking like Charleston Heston and Ricky Nelson. They done took my Jesus, buried him, took on our name, buried me in the shadow grave. Now you got Meshach, you got Rakshak, and you have Abednego. And then you look up in the fire furnace, there's somebody else up in there. So all these lessons had a lot to do with you and me. I remember when the Mo said, look at this, and we was in court, and the judge and them was in there talking. And he did like that, mean shut up. Mean like this, mean I cut your throat. Mean like this, I hear you. Mean like this, I see you. All that come out of Egypt. Egypt is the capital empire of the dominion of Mexico. Now, when you look in the book of Revelation and Genesis, you'll see right now. You'll see 1 foot on land and 1 on the sea. And everybody say that Jesus is lifting up the sister because it's humanity. And Jesus is lifting up the sister. But he raised you and me too. So he's not just uplifting the sister, he's uplifting you and me. You know why? Look at it. He said he got the whole world in his hand. He got you and me, brother, in his hand. He had the whole world in his hand. So, you know, we got to become born again. And there was a brother by the name of Nicodemus. And, you know, Jesus revealed to the people of their sinful ways. And the friendship of Jesus and Lammas, Jesus was explaining to Lammas the meaning of truth. And Jesus was telling us that in order to be born again, you don't have to go back to your mother's womb. Nah, Nicodemus. Nicodemus, I hear you. And you going somewhere physical. But that which is of the flesh is of the flesh. And that which is of the spirit is of the spirit. So now you want to build a temple of Solomon. He already gave you a temple of Solomon. He already gave you a temple of Boaz. He already told you about Ruth. And again, I always say, when it say the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Or the 27th Psalm, when it say the Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? They wasn't talking about Jesus. Let me say this again because it's in our history. They was not talking about Jesus. Man is the Lord of the plane of things made manifest, and you become the Lord of the thing made manifest by following the prophets of God. Drew Ali was the prophet of God. He sent us here. Now in the time of Jesus. You talking about somebody coming to save us from the wrath of Allah? Look at that. But Drew Ali is the only one that brought us nationality. We don't have no right to go to the European court right now. He said, because if you need any more, I would have brought you that too. He said, take these lessons and save yourself. And how do you save yourself? Well, I'm overcoming some things. You know, I'm in the tomb. And me being in this tomb, I'm wrestling with the conquerors of men. And in wrestling with the conquerors of men, I'm going to conquer death. And where you conquer death is meaning that you're going to bring immortality to life. And you're going to paint on the walls of time a rainbow for the sons of men. And Jesus said, what I've done, all men can do. See, we was taught that what Jesus done, we can't do. They got Jesus way over there, and we come out of the same chamber, the same lesson. He was just able to raise his thoughts to infinite wisdom. And when you raise your thoughts to infinite wisdom, you will see omnipotence displayed before thee. You just got to contemplate that frame. So now Solomon and David, they set the pattern for Jesus because Jesus was able to take the lessons that Solomon and David had and incorporate them within his life, and he going to grow. I just like in chapter 17. See? We keep talking about the European from another perspective, but the whole world was called Asia. And Drew Ali told us about when you begin to talk about Abraham, and when you begin to talk about Sarah, and when you begin to talk about Sarah not being able to have children, he had a handmaid named Hagar, and they had a child, and the child name was Ishmael, and Ishmael is the father of the Arabian nation. But Drew Ali told us also about Japanese and Chinese. And when you begin to study the history of the Chinese, you can find out that their history goes all the way back to Africa because Africa is the cradle of civilization. There was the Chinese and there was the Japanese. And when Noble Drew Ali was on the scene, you know how Moors do. You know, we going to the chateau or we going to the party over there and we want to come in late. We want to come in late so they can see my new gaiters I got on or the new dress that you got on. So you come in late. And this is what was taking place when the prophet was on the scene. You had the Japanese and the Chinese. They was all the way up front. They was on the front row. So one of them wanted to join the temple. And they asked the prophet. The secretary asked the prophet, said, the Japanese and Chinese want to join the temple. He said, what should we put on their nationality card? And the prophets say, put ill or Bey, because the Moabite is the oldest nation on earth. And so everybody know that except you and me. Everybody else is honoring the prophet except you and me. You don't want to honor the prophet. You want to dishonor the prophet. And the way you dishonor the prophet is not doing what the prophet say. Genealogy brought us a divine constitution and bylaw, and you chumps, all you want is Act 6. That's totally disrespectful, and you bringing shame and disappointment on Genealogy, because you got to meet him, and you got to meet him in the spirit of truth. You can't meet him in no other spirit, because we have 5 principles. And the 5 principles that we have is love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And now there's a law of karma. And this law of karma deals with cause and it deals with effect. That's why I'm still here today. And a lot of you brothers and a lot of you sisters out there, just like as a brother I know just come out of the Jones. Everybody hated him, but he home now. He home now, and it's the reason his good outweighed his bad. See, we don't realize that we're dealing in the spirit. We're dealing with a spiritual world. This ain't no physical world we're dealing with. There's a spiritual world out here, but there's an ether that you can't see. See, this is the ether right here, but it's a more dense ether. It's an ether that you can't see. So in order to be able to become one with God, in order to be able to come with that spirit of God's prophet, what we have to do, we got to give our life a willing sacrifice. We do have a will, because Allah gave us a will to choose. When Allah was on the scene, we all could think for ourselves. But you at least said, if I can get you to think, you'll save yourself. The reason why I went through the trials and the tribulations that I went through, because I wasn't thinking. I was letting somebody else. Matter of fact, I had a little post, and it was a dog was pushing somebody. That chump went back there and threw them off the thing. So he said, man, I'm tired of following you, man. I want to follow God, because Allah is the Father of the universe. He's the Father of the seen, and He's the Father of the unseen. So right now, you have 2 different spirits. You have a spirit of Gog, and you have a spirit of Magog. And then you have a spirit of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. You're not connected. That's why the prophet was telling us, and he reiterated to us, that when you begin to talk about the higher self, or when you begin to talk about the lower self, the higher self is your godlike self. Your higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life, and breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. Now the lower self is the carnal self, is the body of desires, is a reflection of your higher self, but it's distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. Now we're talking about the murky ethers of the flesh, because everything dealing with the flesh is murky. Wherever I go, the first thing I have to do is think about it first. And once I think about it, then I move out and manifest, because thought is the cause of it all. So these lessons that we have, and that what Genealogy brought us, really was to save us. Because we going out there until we build something and try to elevate something, these Europeans will crush you. See? And you can't do Genealogy's work anyway unless you're prepared to do the work. See? Carnal men want not the light. They love the dark. But when the light shines in the dark, they comprehend it not. They seek to look for a heaven in the sky. Just open up the windows of your mind. Just open the windows of the heart of your mind, and a heaven will come forth. See, because Allah never made a heaven for man. He never made a hell. We are creators and make our own. So we ain't talking about a heaven in the sky. We're talking about opening the windows of our own mind, and in this mind that we are opening the windows of, we're going to let love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice come in. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. You love your brothers and sisters, that you tell them the truth, that they live in peace, have freedom, and justice will come to us all. What does our prophet to us? He is an angel of Allah who was sent to bring us the everlasting gospel of Allah. This gospel is of the resurrection of the dead, and it's not confined to Jew or Greek. See, we was told, just like Carson, the dude that was with Nixon at the Watergate. Carson went to the penitentiary, and when Carson went to the penitentiary, he had so much money, he bought a lot of Bibles for the federal system. And they passed these Bibles out. And when they passed the Bibles out, they said Carson is free. And he's been born again. But I got another brother over there who was a gangster, and he bought a lot of Bibles too. And when he bought a lot of Bibles, he took them inside and gave them away. They said you got to watch him. See, so that means that only a few people could be born again. See, that only applies to you and me. See, I can't be born again. See, these teachings don't apply to me. They only apply to the European nation, the pale-skinned nation of Europe, who was governing a portion of Palestine at that time. And they still governing a portion of Palestine because the Moors are here. And the Moors are here, and they are not governing that portion. You can't think for me. I could think for myself. I'm trying to learn to love instead of hate. When we used to join the temple, this man, you don't want them dudes in the temple. You don't want them dudes in the temple because they ain't going to do right anyway. Well, you want them in the temple because anyway, many are called and a few are chosen. And I didn't understand that lesson till yesterday. And the reason why I learned that lesson yesterday because over the last 50 years, all them brothers, they used to be around in the Moorish temple, they ain't there no more. I mean, you can go to a Saudi Arabia, and you can go to Saudi Arabia and get Qurans free. In the Moorish temple, we can't go nowhere and get nothing free. Anything we get, we got to struggle to do because it's not in their best interest. Genealogy told us that. It's not in the European best interest to tell us the truth about ourselves. Because if they tell us the truth about ourselves, then all their testimonies will be proven false. You know, I just like Jesus. When they had Jesus in the tomb, and they said Jesus left the tomb, his body was no more there, they told all the Roman soldiers, say, look here, man, if you go forward and tell them that the disciples came and stole the body, and we'll give you money and get you right for the whatever that was. And that's the same thing now. They're taking money, they're taking the Masonic orders, and they're doing all these things, to keep you from telling the truth. But nationality is the order of the day. You can't serve two masters at the same time. And if you take a vow about your forefathers, divine and national creed, then you worse than the European. My time is up, and I thank you for yours. And I'm always honored to Portland media here to give us the opportunity to come and just talk about what's in our book, the Moorish Holy Quran, divinely prepared by our Holy Prophet Noble Genealogy. At this time, I recite the Moorish American prayer, the source from which we draw our strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Genealogy. Amen.